Hello, I'm Steven. Welcome into the March 22nd version of Life as We Know It. It's my little corner of the audio world where I kind of talk about things that affected my day in some case or the other, or just things that are on my mind to talk about in general. Radio for a long time, since college, found it by accident, still do it to this day because, well, I love it and it's fun to play music and talk, and been doing morning shows and curating playlists and whatnot, and still love it and still look for any opportunity I can to hang out and talk and do things. That being said, my socials, at Stephen Lewis on the air, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm on TikTok, but I'll be the first to admit that I suck at it because my dad bod dancing in videos might be entertaining, but I don't just have that kind of time right now. So, what's on my mind today? Starting with the fact that parenting is tough. All right, it just is. And I'm not a true parent. I don't have any biological children of my own. But over the last few years, been trying to raise some teenagers. And, you know, a couple of challenges here and there, bumps in the road, if you will. And I guess all parents go through it. Today, the female child, who I adore, like absolutely adore Caitlin. If she were my, she's probably the closest thing to a daughter that I will ever have, and I'm cool with that because, I'm proud of her when she triumphs, but then there are times when, like, she's at that stage where isn't allowed to just necessarily make mistakes without consequence. And today I heard, my friends get to do this, and for the first time I probably channeled about 5 million parents going, I don't care what your friends do. But it's just interesting and it's tough. So shout out to parents out there, because I get that it's it can have its moments here and there, and it's just one of those things where I sometimes don't know what to say. I don't want to make her an enemy, but at the same time, I want her to know that certain things come with consequences, and that doesn't make her a bad kid, because she's not. I would take this version of her over the multiverse versions that could be out there someplace, hands down. But parenting's tough. Like, I've never, I understand what people go through, and perhaps the fact that I'm doing it a little bit later than some, there's probably some people going, ha, now you know, and you deserve it, kind of thing. But anyway, that came out mean, because, again, both the kids are truly good kids. There's nothing with them that, I don't like in any capacity. Are there things I would change? Absolutely. But not necessarily in a bad way. So, that being said, the other thing that was on my mind today is kind of picking back up off of where we were yesterday when we were talking about oversharing. There are a ton of ways to overshare, and I'm not talking about information on your socials. I think we live in a world where social media has given people a voice, and it's a voice where the majority of it is negative. And I think ego plays a part in some of that negativity, but it's definitely negative. And I've used this example before. If you have the best steak, let's say you go out to a restaurant, you have the best steak you've ever had, the chances of you writing a glowing review about how good the steak was, how the service was amazing, and the atmosphere was great is very slim to none. But if you go to the same restaurant and you have a steak and you wanted it cooked medium and it came out medium rare twice and you had to send it back, and the server let your water glass get a little too empty one too many times, you'll write a scathing review how you'll never go there again, and so will everybody else, because that's what social media has become. We share negative. And the director, David S. Sandberg, is the director of Shazam, Fury of the Gods, and I'm jumping on this because it's kind of fresh and because a lot of people are talking about this. I like this movie. It's entertaining. It's not as good as the first one, but it did not deliver at the box office over the weekend. They were hoping for a minimum of $35 million. It made $30 million on a $100 and some odd million budget, which isn't great, but this movie has had so many problems, and Warner Brothers has nobody to blame but themselves. And I think there's just this toxic fandom thing that is happening right now when it comes to any kind of big blockbuster movies in general. And there's hatred spewed at directors because, you know, they didn't like the thing or whatever. But it's annoying that that's what's out there. But now, Sandberg has complained about the marketing of the film, and this thing has been marketed to hell. It was supposed to come out, let's put this in perspective. The first movie came out in 2019, so pre-pandemic, 4 years ago. Now we're getting a sequel that's been done for about 2 years, but they've shuffled it around and messed with reshoots and all that stuff because it changed. They've changed the overall world, so because they're rebooting and changing the world that this movie exists in, you have all this kind of fan backlash and hatred because not everybody likes what's going on. And then you have to play into fact Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And I'm a Rock fan, but I have been saying forever that the Rock slide is imminent. And what do I mean by that? I love The Rock. Rock ranks as one of my favorite people that I've met, that I've always wanted to meet, and he's the one person that has left me speechless when I did meet him. Quick story. This was circa, I guess it had to be 99, and a girl that I went to college with, and she dated one of the guys that worked on the radio station that I would eventually end up working for, which is kind of entertaining as well. We were at a Cincinnati Cyclones game, me and a couple of my college friends, and she was there too, watching a hockey game. And during said hockey game, we somehow got on the subject of professional wrestling at the time, because WWE, WWF at the time, and all that was in its heyday. And she had just said, out of the blue, she's like, my friend Dwayne wrestles. And I'm like, oh, your friend Dwayne? Who's your friend Dwayne? You know, is he some kind of like jobber or whatever? And she goes, no, you know, smell what I'm cooking. And I literally, I think I might have even dropped the whatever I was eating or drinking at the game. I'm like, The Rock? You know The Rock? And she's like, yeah, we went to school together at Miami. And I'm like, no way. So anyway, long story short, we get on this subject. I'm like, if they ever come to town, I don't believe you. You have to introduce us. So sure enough, fast forward a couple of months, and WWE comes to Cincinnati. And she then says, hey, Dwayne's coming to town if you want to meet him. I said, okay. And I was still kind of skeptical or whatever. So she comes walking back to one of the security guards at the time, one of the WWE security guards, not the guys who are paid by the venue to keep things in line, but the WWE security people, and looks at him. He looks at her, they nod or whatever, and he says to her, Dwayne's not ready yet. So she sits there and ends up, we sit there and wait. And sure enough, he comes back a few minutes later, takes us into the back in the catering, and I'm walking past, like, this is a young, like, rambunctious wrestling punk's dream. I'm walking past Triple H. I'm walking past the Giant. I'm walking past Mick Foley, and all these guys, like, I'm just, like, head is on a swivel spinning around. So she takes us back into a room, and a few minutes later, in walks The Rock, aka Dwayne Johnson. And they talk for a little while because they went to school. Like, she was legit, 100%. They were talking back and forth about Florida days and all this other stuff. And I mean, I wasn't privy to most of those conversations. I was just sitting there, and he was just down to earth and talking, kind of like he's talked in interviews now, but this is prior to all of that. And he looked dead at me, and I was making jokes with some of the security guys back there because I knew a couple of them from the bar scene and whatnot. And from, you know, various things, because a buddy of mine did security for shows and bars, so I just kind of, you know, was in on that. So we were joking around, and Dwayne says to me, how come you don't say anything to me, but you'll talk to them? And I'm like, well, because you're talking all calm. I'm like, you're The Rock. I'm like, I want you to lay the smack down on me. And he tore off, after we talked for a little while and joked around for a bit, he tore part of a catering bag, and on the catering bag he signed an autograph that said, know your role and shut your mouth. And I still have it to this day on the same exact catering bag from where we were, and that was my first meeting with The Rock. So needless to say, I've been a fan of The Rock for years, but rewind about a year or so, 2 years ago, and I started to say, hey, the rock slide is in progress because Dwayne has $1 billion in the bank and needs to go away for a while and give everybody a break, because what this fandom and this country loves is when somebody falls. And I mean, everybody wants to tear somebody down. Look at Will Smith. Now, granted, Will is self-inflicted. He's a human being that had a very bad day, but now people just want to hate Will Smith because of what he did. And with Dwayne, definitely some overexposure there between Ballers, which was a great show, Young Rock, and all these other things he was doing for a while. Dwayne Johnson was box office gold. But this whole Warner Brothers thing has kind of pushed him in a different light. Same thing with Disney. Disney has some issues with Dwayne too. And I don't fault Dwayne for what he's doing. The Rock is getting his. He's pushing his brand however he can. He's integrating his other brands however he can, whether it's Zoa, his energy drink, or his tequila, or whatever. He's taking care of himself first, but I think what's happening is it's coming at the expense of other things. It's coming at the expense of his popularity, and it's starting to come at the expense of people going, maybe this guy's not quite the box office draw we thought he was, and maybe we should back off on The Rock for a little bit, Warner Brothers included. Zachary Levi, who is a really good guy, he's the star of Shazam. There was a report that came out that said Dwayne Johnson nixed the post-credit scene. Basically, the director said they had an entirely different plan for the post-credit scene, and it didn't happen because Dwayne said, no, I don't want anybody from Black Adam cameoing in Shazam, which again, I said this in the thing the other day, why he's so anti this movie, I'll never know, because just character-wise, it doesn't make sense. So that's why they ended up using the two characters from Suicide Squad instead, because 3 days before they were supposed to shoot the scene, Mr. Johnson says no. So basically, he wanted nothing to do. And supposedly the original idea for Black Adam was Shazam was supposed to show up at the end of Black Adam. And when I piece this all together, it will make complete sense. I'll spoil a little bit of Shazam if you haven't seen it yet. I'm sorry, but if you haven't seen it by now, odds are you're probably not planning on seeing it. Anyway, but Zachary Levi basically backs what The Wrap reported. They reported that Johnson blocked characters from appearing in Fury of the Gods, and that the actor-producer also nixed the cameo from Zachary Levi in Black Adam. And Levi finally responded with, "The truth shall set you free." So basically what was going on is Dwayne was lobbying Warner Brothers to do his own thing and reinvent all these superhero movies based around his character, which unfortunately, that movie sucked. It wasn't great. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't a strong story. It just wasn't good. I've talked about that ad nauseum. But in the end, the characters from the Justice Society pop up out of nowhere in Shazam, and they want him to join. They're supposed to ask him to join the Justice Society, which would have made sense if where Henry Cavill was in Black Adam ends up being Zachary Levi, but none of that plays out. So Dwayne has kind of wrecked now two franchises, which makes it good for the new DC bosses because they'll just be able to sweep everything under the table and start fresh and go, well, these movies were already made, so it's not on us. But I think the ego of The Rock has kind of gotten the better of him. And now if you look back, him and Vin Diesel had a very public feud that led to The Rock not being in Fast and Furious. There's rumors now that originally everybody thought this was all on Vin Diesel and Vin Diesel's ego, and I'm sure there's part of it that probably is, but there's a lot of people now going, well, maybe Dwayne wanted to kind of take over the franchise of the Fast and Furious like he has everybody else and push a little too much of his brand, his ideas, and all that stuff, and it didn't necessarily play out for Dwayne to do so, and that caused the rift that kept him out of that franchise. We'll never know for sure, but we may never know for sure, but it's certainly, the dominoes certainly kind of all fit together, or the timeline seems to all fit together. So I don't know. I still like The Rock, but I do think The Rock needs to go away for a while. It's a shame he's not going to go back to WrestleMania, because I think that would boost his profile a little bit more than it needs to be. But I also think he also needs to go away for a while. Take a vacation. I've said this forever. You have to give people time to miss you. If you're always there, they're not going to appreciate the fact that you're always there. But the other side of that is everybody has comments. People like me who drop commentary on things ends up making this worse than it is, and it gets people who are normally talented, puts them in a bad position, and they have to take the negative heat all the time, which I have to imagine gets pretty old. So anyway, diatribe over. That's what I got today. So now you know what the rock slide is all about, and now you know how tough parenting can be from time to time. So stop listening to me, even though you probably already have about 10 minutes ago, and go spend some time with people you like, love, or tolerate, because time is limited. So get out of here.